Hello everyone! Like I teased in my return video, I'm going to be talking about these idiots behind me and England's performances at the Euros. For the first game against Serbia, it wasn't a terrible performance, but Southgate does what he always does. We go 1-0 up and then we just play defensive, solid football with zero expression. I thought that he might have learned, in the final against Italy, that you can't play like that, because a one-goal lead can be taken away by one good counter or one misplaced pass. Anyway, the Serbia game at the end was a decent performance and something to build from. Slightly disheartening that the only goal that we scored came from a deflected cross, but it's not the worst performance of the competition. Now, talking about the game versus Denmark, ignore everything I've just said about it being something to build on, because it was the exact same performance against a team with more quality. We get a goal from another deflected cross, and with the players that started the game, we created nothing more than a long-range effort from Foden. Hjulmand then hits a wonderful strike to bring the game back level, and it's time to see what Southgate can think of. His genius was to take off Trent, the player who in the first two games had created the most chances of our team. That's not an opinion, that's a stat that the BBC put up after the second game. I'll come back to that later on. At the 70th minute, we bring on Bowen, Eze and Watkins. Watkins makes a good run in behind, but he couldn't convert it. That's the second half in a nutshell. Now, what did the pundits and football Twitter make of the game? Trent is the problem, and the experiment hasn't worked. Yeah, the guy with the creative output is the issue. Not the fact that the only quick forward on the pitch, being Saka, didn't make any runs in behind, and Kane thinks he's a midfielder. When Kane did that at Spurs, it worked because Son and Kulusevski make runs. Trent's effective at Liverpool because Salah, Nunez and Jota make runs. It's a complete tactical error from Gareth Southgate, with the instructions that he gives. Anyway, on to Slovenia. A depressing game to fall asleep to. The only good chance of the game being offside. Now, does anyone remember Bellingham doing anything in that game? Did he get any criticism? No, but Foden did, despite being the only person to do anything. 0-0 and failing to score against a team that had 26% of the ball. That, on top of the other two games, should be cause for concern. But it was just brushed off as playing it safe. Denmark would have needed to have won by 2 to knock us off top spot, so it was just playing with no risk. The pundits all collectively agreed that we can win the tournament playing this way, and that we shouldn't change it despite it not being nice to watch. Ignoring that we struggled to beat a poor Serbia, we didn't beat a poor Denmark, who might have actually been better than us on the day, and we couldn't beat Slovenia when they barely touched the ball. Now, the Slovakia game is the game that showcased Southgate's complete lack of flexibility and tactical acumen. Slovakia, on the right-hand side of the midfield and on the right side of the defence, have two 37-year-olds. England's option for the left wing are two technical but not mega quick players, or the direct, fast player in great form. Guess which one didn't feature at all? That's right, Anthony Gordon, who was handcrafted to be the perfect player to play against this opposition right-hand side. So, onto the game itself. In the first 25 minutes, Slovakia break twice and score from the second one. That's the first half. We created nothing. Absolutely nothing. The second half starts and we score another goal that's offside. Pickford then gets caught out and nearly gets beaten from a long, long way out. Late in the half, Kane has a free header that he didn't even put on target. Rice hits the post with a good long-range effort, and let me just say, he's been our best player at the tournament. Why? His main duties are to stop attacks before they can start. and the best holding midfielders in the world don't get noticed. If you don't see them get beaten by someone, they've done their job. They've had a great game. And Rice has all tournament. In added time, Bellingham scores the overhead kick to keep the hopes alive after doing nothing for 94 minutes and anything in the 2 games prior, and then has the ego to say who else during his celebration. Then at the start of extra time, Eze does a terrible shot, and someone might say that it was a pass, but it was not. That was definitely a shot. Tony then recovers it, plays a wonderful headed pass and puts it on a complete plate for Kane, who's someone I'll talk about later. Now, let's bring up the post-game coverage and what words of wisdom our great minds that we sit in those studios have to offer. Apparently, we were brave and showed a resilience to be able to fight back from 1-0 down. Now, does anyone hear that and just think, how can that be what someone who gets paid to talk about football can think? But that's what we have to put up with. Either they don't have a clue what they're talking about, or they're being paid not to say negative things about England and Southgate. They then went on to talk about Bellingham and how good he is and how well he played, despite him being terrible for nearly all of the last 3 matches, with the odd moment. The quarter-final. Now this was just hilarious. Switzerland take the lead through Mbolo, and Saka gets us back in the game with a wonderful strike, finally having some attacking output that isn't an assist that didn't get counted from a deflected cross. But what happened 2 minutes before the goal? Southgate finally made some changes, changing us to an attacking style of play, with Walker and Stones being the only ones really staying back, and telling players to make runs and move into the space. Rice, dragging a Swiss player out of position, made the space for Saka to have a clear sight on goal, and he took it perfectly. Now, something that the ITV highlights aren't showing for some reason is that at the end of the second half, Switzerland attacked and had a ball whipped in that Mbolo went for, but if he leaves it, it's an easy goal for Ndoye. We were one shout from Ndoye away from being knocked out of the tournament by Switzerland in normal time. Southgate brings on Tony and Trent and we win the shootout, and after a disaster class from Akanji, what was that penalty? Now, this is where I take issue with the pundits most of all. I'll go through the BBC Sport post-match thoughts one by one. Lineker first talks about how happy he is for Trent, about how hard it's been for him, and about how the experiment failed, even though it didn't, like I said before. Anyone that thinks that Gallagher or Mainu did noticeably better than Trent have lost the plot. All 3 of them hardly had an impact, and if anything, Gallagher was a detriment when he was on the pitch. Lineker and Micah Richards then talk about how Trent would have worked with England not playing as deep, which was blatantly obvious to anyone with eyes and without an agenda from the start of the tournament. Now, I'm going to say something that people aren't going to like. Can people please calm down about Saka? Lineker was introducing him, and Rio finally decides to pipe up and just goes, "Star boy." It shows the Saka interview, and then after that, Rio just spends a few minutes glazing him, talking about how it's not just his ability, it's his personality that just makes you like him. He then goes on to say that he's England's most important player, because he's so different to everyone else. So, let's talk about Saka. Is he a good player? Absolutely. Of course he is. Has he been good at the Euros? No. Rio is waffling, and quite a lot of people online are doing the same. They just clearly don't watch the game without a bias. He's played all 5 games, and most of the minutes, he scored that 1 goal, but what else has he done? That assist that didn't get given to him because of the deflected cross. He's created 0 big chances and makes 1 key pass per game. He's beat people after taking them on, but if there's no end product, does it matter? I don't think so. And Lampard makes a joke about Rio, because Rio apparently, during the entire game, whenever Saka cut in, he was going, "This is what he does at Arsenal." And Lampard made a joke saying, "Yeah, well, you said it every single time, so eventually you'll be right." Micah Richards then goes on to say something that boggles the mind. England put in a good performance. Excuse me? How they played today was brilliant. What? Then he talks about the importance of togetherness in the team, which is important, but it's not as important as the manager knowing what tactics are. Then they had an interview with Southgate in which he said that we played brilliantly and it's the best we've played, which isn't a high bar, to be fair, talking about the character and the resilience to come back from behind. But it's completely ignoring the fact that we have a far better squad than Switzerland and shouldn't be going behind against them to begin with. He also thinks that he was tactically spot on, which when he said that just made my head fall into my hands. Micah then took a shot at people who said that England are too defensive, and then immediately goes on to talk about how much better we are when we commit players forward and get up the pitch, which is the exact thing that people have been asking for from Southgate the entire time, and that he defended him on before, saying that being defensively solid can take us to glory. So, Michael was enjoying being a hypocrite, and then Rio talks about how much the sense of unity will be helping the players to perform at their best. If that's the case, why can't we beat worse teams in normal time? We have great players, and they're all performing according to Rio. Then why aren't we winning easily against poor teams? Might it be because of the tactics of the guy who's just been praised? Couldn't be that, surely not. Lampard then does a little bit of good punditry when he talks about Stones being good and Rice playing really well and being a good leader and keeping everything in the centre stable. But then he praises Harry Kane while also saying that he had a quiet night, so that cancels out. Good bit of punditry, bad bit of punditry. 0. Why do they have to just spew nonsense? Say what you was planning on saying and then shut up. He didn't need to extend it talking about Kane. You can see that he was searching in his mind who to say when he should have just stayed quiet. Micah then finally says something right, saying that Konsa was good, being dropped in at the deep end and performing at a high level. So after about 10 bad takes, we get 2 good ones in a row, because then Rio and Lampard talk about how if Shaw's fit, he needs to be starting to bring balance and some width to the left-hand side. Which is why I've been wondering, where are all the left-backs? Why bring Joe Gomez? Konsa will do just as good, if not better, if Trippier gets injured and we need cover for the left-hand side while Shaw was out. Rico Henry and Tyrick Mitchell, bringing one of them was just obvious. I just don't get it at all. However, I'll save that for a video that I'm going to need to do some thinking for. As always, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.